Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy.
Hi, my name is Sean Berry. I'm a partner at Lift Economy. My guest today is Hugues Sygney Jr. Welcome to Next Economy Now, Hugues.
Sean, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. And yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show today. And I'd love to invite you to start off with, can you share some of your background and how you got involved in the work that you're doing today?
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Hugues Sygney Jr. I am currently leading the racial equity work over at B-Lab US in Canada as our senior program manager. I have the privilege of working alongside Marielle Martin and Shauna Kelman. In fact, I just approached my 2-year anniversary at B-Lab. I arrived at B-Lab 2 years ago with a goal in mind, which is to support our B Corps around racial equity frameworks and trainings and tools to be able to continue advocating for racial equity, but more or less advocating for our BIPOC communities and for the ways we show up in terms of businesses within our ecosystem. And it's been an amazing journey thus far, and really look forward to kind of diving deeper in terms of the programs, in terms of my background and, how I ended up at B-Lab and the work that I was doing prior to that. And so, let's dive in.
So yeah, I'd be curious to hear about some of your background that kind of led up to this. I know you've been involved with a lot of things, and it's maybe just give us the short edit.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day. It was like, what do you do? And I was like, you know what? I actually don't know because I do so much, and the reality is that my background started, in fact, in education. And so I worked for some time in Head Start and after school programs. I specialized in curriculum design and supporting, strengthening after school programs here in New York City. And so I had the privilege of working with 6 public schools in incorporating these public after school and Head Start programs. And taking it a bit further back, my official journey started actually in climate justice, if I want to be very honest with you and transparent. And that actually started because of despair and catastrophe. And so my family being Haitian, I shortly after the earthquake in 2010 decided to go to Haiti to support family and just to ensure that they had the resources and support that they need. And during my time there, I recognized there was such an influx of youth in the street, not being able to identify where to go, how to continue their education, how to support their community. And so I decided to shoot a documentary to uplift the voices of the Haitian people during that time period. And that was one of the most transformational experiences of my life, because through that experience, I birthed FTK, which is an organization that I started called Freedom Through Knowledge. And what the intention of Freedom Through Knowledge was and is to provide support to communities from a grassroots level. And how do they identify resources to support their communities and not depend on NGOs and government and all the folks who claim to want to help and support, but yet, oftentimes fall short on that promise. And what we know to be true is the folks on the front lines and, community leaders, they know what their community needs. And so I wanted to use that documentary to help uplift their voices with hopes that we would find leaders that would support these initiatives. And so during that time period in work, I was invited to speak in Cuba and talk about this grassroots approach and how could we, take this on an international level and scale these types of programs and initiatives that would strengthen communities in a way that would provide a framework for, communities that are continuously going through some of these challenges and hardships. Through that invitation, I met the Brazilian ambassador that was at the time in audience and offered me an opportunity to start this work in Brazil. And so shortly after Haiti, I decided to pack my things and I moved to Brazil, and I wanted to really focus on how do I integrate this program, not only within the comunidades in Brazil, but more or less, how do I use this opportunity to case study what we know to be true, which is a community standpoint. You have Black and Brown, Indigenous, and people of color experiencing the same hardships globally. And I wanted to be able to provide a case study that showed the similarities of what our folks here in the United States were going through and how that also showed up in Haiti, how that showed up in Brazil, with hope that we can then use that information to really have a productive conversation around how do we get resources to communities that are going through the same types of challenges. And so I ended up spending 2 years in Brazil focusing on this case study approach. I had the privilege of working with some great partners in helping revitalize communities, bring mental health support to these communities, education resources, financial resources. And through that program, we were able to transform one community at a time through its leaders. And so through that work, I just developed a really clear framework that would allow businesses to be able to connect with communities in a way that really bridged that gap in tension that was there prior to what we started to see after these recent changes in terms of like folks focusing on stakeholder governance, folks focusing on climate, folks focusing on, racial equity and JEDI topics. And that for me was when I realized that I need to be doing more and supporting more businesses because I had the ability to connect with businesses and I had clearly the insights and ways to connect with community. And so bringing them together was really the formula that allowed me to see true change within the community. And so that same concept was, where I focused my strategy and curriculum design, which then brought me back to the States, working with some local politicians here in New York City. And then I came across an organization called B-Lab US and Canada and seeing that they were doing exactly what it is that I was, hoping to find community in. Again, identifying key businesses that are focusing on a regenerative economy, focusing on a community-centered approach, uplifting those voices of those community leaders, focusing on frameworks that is going to strengthen their organization when it comes to JEDI and ensuring that those frameworks kept folks that look like me safe within their businesses, and then being able to really provide the framework to non-B Corps with hopes that we can reach across the aisle and get folks to engage there so we can essentially see the change we want in our community. And so, long story, but I felt like that was a little bit longer than I had anticipated, is where and how I ended up at B-Lab, US and Canada.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing. And that's quite a journey. So from education, curriculum design, climate change, and bringing you international, Haiti, Brazil, and then coming back to the US and working with B-Lab, US and Canada, and connecting businesses and communities, right, for mutual beneficial outcomes.
Again, when I say climate, and we were really talking about climate justice because, what we tend to see in these communities is when they're devastated by natural disasters, you have these institutions like the UN or, other institutions that determine the safety of folks going into certain communities. And so, oftentimes when I go into some of these communities, they're not getting the support they need because they're considered to be red zones or they're unsafe. And so these are the people that need the support the most. And so and what I recognize is we had an opportunity to identify businesses that would support with that gap in order for the resources to get to the people. And so the work that we did in Haiti and Brazil and some other countries, we were really able to see the role businesses can play. And that's where for me it resonated in terms of like B-Lab US and Canada, in terms of businesses really playing a key role to help shift the dynamic and to help raise awareness around topics that oftentimes were being dismissed or continuously met with tension or reasons of why this should not be the focus of the organization. And what we know to be true today is that the more organizations focus on the community, the environment, and folks who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, the more progress and successful their businesses have been. Alienating these topics, alienating these challenges does a disservice not only to the individual leader, but to the business and to the community that it serves. And so what we've seen in the B-Lab US and Canada space that I've been tremendously proud of is that we've seen companies step into the role of, what it means to empower community leaders, what it means to incorporate some of these frameworks within the organization. And then we've seen these businesses thrive. We're talking about companies, Athletic Gap, Rhino Foods, Patagonia, and so many more. And I only mention those because, again, these are folks who have continuously created programs and ways to engage with community that has set the precedent, but also who has created a new way of what does leadership look like. And that for me has been so refreshing to witness businesses really playing an active role in areas that oftentimes were not where businesses showed up, right? If it was either government or it was either something philanthropic or NGOs. But now today, what we're seeing is businesses actually playing a key role. And that's where, for me, the magic really has been in terms of supporting B Corps and ensuring that they have the tools that they need to continue the work, because businesses can play a pivotal role in some of the areas that the government and NGOs and other forms of institutions cannot when it comes to areas that are mostly impacted.
That's why we have you here, right, on Next Economy Now, right, where we feature the stories of businesses playing those solutionary roles. Is there any like case story vignettes you could share about some of this?
Absolutely. I mean, those stories are endless. I can give you a really good one. And I was just having a great conversation with my dear friend, Joseph Kenner, CEO of Grayston Bakery. Grayston Bakery has been doing some phenomenal work in ways that they have over exceeded expectations around like what it means for a business to show up, right? So for example, Grayson is very known for their brownies, of course, right? Which is delicious. And they support Ben and Jerry's with their, I think it's the chunky fudge sundae, which is delicious, by the way. Shout out to Ben and Jerry's. But more or less, their open hiring policy outside of the product that they sell is one of the biggest success stories. For those who don't know, the open hiring policy is a policy that was created to support folks who have historically had challenges in identifying jobs, may not have completed an education, may have been incarcerated and are returning citizens, may just have all the challenges in life happening to them that prevented them from finding quality jobs. And Grayston Bakery entire staff was hired through this open hiring policy. And that has transformed not only Grayston Bakery, but the community, because now the folks who are working in Grayston are going back to their community and able to do more for their community, send their kids to college, being able to be financially and fiscally responsible to be able to achieve and obtain some of the things that they never even dreamed of, such as a home, having a college plan for their kids, healthcare, a living wage, and continued resources and tools. And so Grayston just recently did a tour, and they are now currently working with IKEA, and IKEA is looking to adopt this approach in terms of the open hiring policy. So what we're seeing, again, through the leadership of some of these B Corps is folks who are not identified as a B Corp are coming into this ecosystem and asking for the framework and the ways and the guidance and how they can implement this within their organization and institution, because they see the benefit of it, right? What Grayston have seen is that they have never fired anyone. People don't leave their job. They have seen 99% retention in staff. And where folks start off from the belt line all the way to management, like there's a level of climbing up and being in managerial positions and director positions and leadership positions that has, again, changed the trajectory of where they thought they could end up. So when we talk about these case studies, when we talk about companies like Grayston, it's to really talk about what could a business do? And businesses traditionally in the past have thought like, I have a product, I sell it, right? I offer a service, I offer it. Now you can go beyond that. You can go even bigger, bolder. And that looks like what Grayston is doing. Another great case study, Rhino Foods, the income advance program, Rhino Food, a small business. And I wanted to give that stark contrast because, B Corps based in the US and Canada comprises of small to medium sized businesses. So although I mentioned earlier Patagonia and, Warby Parker and Athletic Gap, the majority of our B Corps within the US and Canada space, they're small and medium sized businesses. So they're small and yet mighty. And this is what I'm referring to when it comes to, like, for example, Rhino Foods and their income advance program. Here is this small Vermont-based organization focusing on, and the idea of the income advance program was birthed because employees went to HR to say, look, I need help to pay rent this month. I need help to send my kids to school. And I don't have good credit. I don't have any credit at all. I don't have anything I could leverage. And so going to the bank, I already know I'm going to be turned down. And if I don't get support through you, I'm going to have to leave this role because I need to go find work or figure out somewhere I can afford. And so the leadership at Rhino Foods, who is a dear friend as well, Ted Castle, decided to really think through how does he show up? How does the organization show up for their frontline staff, for their frontline team? And so they decided to work closely with local banks and really figure out a program that they could design together that would essentially offer a loan through HR and would be backed and approved by the bank to be able to support the staff that was having challenges. And so the way this program worked is that you go to your HR, you ask for a loan, They offer you the loan. There's no background check. There's none of the things that essentially pull folks into these predatory approaches. And then you get what you needed, and you are then asked to pay that back through your check. And so if that's biweekly, or monthly, they deduct that out. And then once you wrap that up, they offer you financial literacy courses. They offer you more resources and incentivize you to remain engaged with the program. So this way you don't have to ask anymore. And now you have the tools, and now you have the ways to figure out, how do I remain fiscally responsible or financially safe? And so to that point, Rhino Foods now has created a whole nonprofit around this income advance program that has now been scaled nationally and now being adopted by so many other organizations that are even not B Corps because of their leadership. So this is the case studies. These are the ways we are seeing B Corps step up, lead by example, where now we are seeing a lot of the gaps being filled by businesses. And this is why when we say businesses for good in a regenerative economy, this is what this looks like. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how can a organization show up for their community. It's more than the service that you offer. It's more than the product that you sell. It's about the people who's engaged with it. It's about the environment that's impacted by what you're doing. It's about the leadership that is feeling inspired to continue to do more for the up and coming leaders that are in learning and training. And that was just two. And again, I can keep going through the list of all of the amazing programs, but this is the why. This is the why for me of why I decide to work in this space in terms of B-Lab US and Canada, because there is this beautiful connection between businesses and community and environment working collectively. And that collective activation is where we see the most transformational shift that essentially goes into racial equity policy and changes on the legislation level, where we start to see partnership across the aisle with non-B Corps, where we start to see conversations happening in terms of courageous conversations around race with folks who may not look like me and may have a different upbringing, but willing to learn. And so, this is why I decided to do a lot of not just international travel and curriculum, because I needed to understand the nuances between folks who look like me and folks who do look like me, and how does some of these similar challenges, when it comes to socioeconomic challenges, how are these challenges showing up in other regions around the world? And how can we take those case studies? How can we storytell those stories in a way that amplifies the voices while connecting them to the opportunities and resources? And so I just shout out those two amazing organizations, such as, again, Greyston and Rhino, because they are doing continuously phenomenal work. And again, this is why, I'm in the space that I'm in, Sean.
Wow, thanks. I love those case stories. And I did have the privilege to go tour Greyston and, know some of the team there. And just strikes me as so trusting, right? Of like, sign up. We got a job for you.
That's it. That's all it is.
Come on in, right?
Yeah.
To your point, the enormous success that they've had with that, right? And so to me, it's a very like trusting and loving approach. Like you're saying, partnership with community. And again, the Rhino program is like, hey, you got a job here? You need money? We're going to get you some money. Let's get you some funding. And what do you need? So instead of the exchange being kind of extractive, we're the boss, we're going to pull your life force, right? And you manage the rest. It's like, no, what do you need? How can we help you? How can we show up, as a collective for mutual benefit?
Yeah. So, I must admit, if I may just add, because again, in being fully transparent with you, one of the challenges that I had faced earlier on in my journey in terms of the work that I was doing internationally was that, I was doing it alone because I didn't see enough businesses stepping up the way I've seen today, in the ways that I've seen B Corp step up today. And so, one thing to be true is that, to not inflict any harm on these communities, I felt like it would be ideal to kind of manage and do these things alone. But then just like anyone else, I got tired. And then I identified the B-Lab US and Canada as one of those places that really have an ecosystem of businesses that are using their platform, that are using their businesses for good. And it helped me better understand what these businesses can do. And businesses can go above and beyond what they're selling and what the services are. And I hope to see this movement seep into other areas that we never thought in terms of like that are not B Corps, because essentially it's bigger than B Labios in Canada. It's bigger than B Corps. It's about the community. It's about the global environment. And if we are not stepping up to be able to address these things, then who will? What are we leaving for our planet, for our kids, for folks who are younger and yet had no input into some of the challenges that they're stepping into, and so I say all of that to say that this work is a journey. There's no perfect way to do it. What works for Grayston, what works for Rhino Foods may work completely different for another organization. I think if I were to, because I had a lot of, companies say like, what could I be doing? How could I be showing up? I have a conversation. So one of the things that I do really well is, I'm a certified international restorative justice trainer. And the ways that I do that is I listen to the community and then I listen to the businesses, and then I find the middle ground, and then I bring both groups together, and then we have a dialogue that allows the community and it allows the business leaders to share their perspectives, their respective perspectives. And then we design a community guardrail and framework together that approaches what is that we're going to be doing moving forward. Who are the decision makers? What are the clear outcomes that we're hoping from this project, with the goal in mind to, again, see that impact the community in a positive way, impact the business in a positive way. Everyone benefits. And so, for me, it's a matter of really being able to have courageous conversations with business leaders and saying, what is your why? So going back to the point of like business and saying, hey, what could I do? Like, what's your why? Why do you want to do anything anyway? Besides sell a product, besides offer a service, right? When you identify that why, then you got to ask yourself, like, what is the grounding of that? And how are you going to remain grounded to that principle? And then from there, you express that to the community that you are hoping to have a relationship with. Oftentimes, when you go through that approach, this holistic approach, the level of trust and relationship building and the ways the community shows up for your business, shows up for you, is astronomical. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's something that you only witness when you've invested the time. Right. And just like in any relationship, to be able to see the fruits of that relationship, you need to invest in it. And so the more you invest in the community, the more the community shows up for you. Most of these folks who are over at Rhino Foods and Grayston, they've been there for 30 plus years, 15 plus years. These are people who would give everything they have to these organizations because these organizations has given everything to them. And so these are the ways that we are envisioning businesses to show up. And when I come today on the lift economy and just thinking of the term lift, right? Like, how do we lift up everyone to an economical position that allows them to thrive and not really have to keep going back and asking for handouts? And so for me, it made complete sense to share some of these stories, but also to connect with you with hopes that folks who are listening to this can really understand that you can empower, you can lift folks to an economic and fiscally responsible opportunity and ways to thrive. And I'm just excited for the platform to be in existence, and you, Sean.
Thanks for naming that. And that's one of the things I really want to share, right? And invite people into this reality of how abundant it can be, right? When we really partner, and that this vision of collective liberation is not fantastic. It is real. And there's real people doing it. And there's so much like, analysis as a part of capitalism, of cost and benefit and everything. And it doesn't quite come across of just how much abundance comes through when you're open and loving and considerate and build relationships and take everybody into account. So thanks for naming that. And that's part of my hope for the future, is that becomes the standard, right? And then that is the lift, right? It actually lifts everybody up. And then we're in a new reality of a caring world.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, when I think of our ecosystem, our ecosystem is so diverse, right? We're talking about over 5,300 B Corps globally, about 2,300 of them being based here in US and Canada. We're talking about over 31 publicly traded B Corps. We're also talking about over 10,000 benefit corporations. Our B Impact assessment, which is one of the biggest tools that we have, we have had over 200,000 people, non-B Corps as well, engage with the tool. So what we've seen within this ecosystem is that folks really recognize the power of the movement. They understand the benefit it has to the global environment and to local communities. So I am very hopeful with the continued leadership within the space, that it will attract businesses to do the right thing. I think we're living in a very tense time right now in the world that we're living in, whether it's, in all the arenas and industries, but ultimately we need to stay true to our core. We cannot be distracted. We cannot be focusing on what everyone else is doing. We need to understand our moral compass and the reasons why we're in this space. Why did we enter the space in the first place? Hence my point before, when businesses or companies come up to me like, hey, Hughes, what can I be doing? My first question to you is like, why? Why do you want to do anything in the first place? Why do you not just want to sell your product and then just keep it moving as you've done in the past? What has changed? What has changed within you as a leader? Because outside of your business, who really drives this change is leadership, right? So really being able to offer a mindset and then having these restorative conversations that really pull folks in versus making them feel isolated or ashamed or just disappointed in, ways that historically they've shown up or their community has shown up. You are the change maker you're seeking. You can actively choose to change how your business is running today if you're in that leadership position, right? You have to just find the right community to support you, and then being able to identify businesses that maybe have the same challenges as you, but has overcome those challenges, and being able to work with them to be able to have the solutions you need to progress forward. And so this is what I say to businesses who are either interested in joining the space or struggling to find out their why. But it's more platforms like this, and it's more courageous conversations like this that talk about, why are we doing this work? Yes, I love my colleagues and teammates in the network that I'm a part of, but the why for me is the people that oftentimes didn't have anyone speaking up for them, showing up for them. And that's also including, and most importantly, the planet. When we talk about the planet, we're such, and not saying in this particular space, but we are consistently extracting in a way that, like, when you don't replenish, what we know to be true is that things cease to exist, right? It becomes obsolete. And so ultimately, we want to see a regenerative economy, but to do that, we need to focus on people. We need to focus on community. We need to focus on economic opportunity. We need to focus on education and the tools that allows us to unlearn and relearn the ways we show up.
So one thing I wanted to name and presence and also celebrate with you. So we've been a part of the, Lift Economy. We've been part of the B Corp movement for a while. I think we got certified in 2014. So it'll be a decade, and I've been aware of it for a while. I've also seen in that decade some dramatic changes at B Lab, the organization. Yeah. And so I just want to celebrate that and also just get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, look, there's no perfect organization, right? But one thing to be true, and what I've witnessed in B Lab, is that, to your point, if we are able to measure, and we can measure and see the progress from when you've become first certified, when Lift Economy became first certified, to where we are today in 2024. And consistently, we've seen progress in addressing some of the spaces that, folks have dismissed for a very long time. And so I'm very proud of the leadership from a global perspective of, what B Lab Global, B Lab US and CAN, and our respective partners around the world are doing in terms of supporting businesses, but the community, and again, the environment, and really being able to be a part of this change. I recently just had an amazing daughter. She was just recently born. And, when I think what my legacy is, when I think what my imprint will be, these are the ways that I want it to show up. These are the ways that I want her to see what I, at the core, believe to be true and right. And this is the space in terms of B Lab US and Canada, this ecosystem, and being able to see how leaders really empower the younger generation, the next generation. And I'm just really glad that I'm a part of a community of leaders that really is driving that change and evolution and progress forward. Despite the challenges that we have ahead, despite all of the things that we are faced, like I said, as long as we're staying true to who we are and the reason why, our why is why we're in this space, we'll continue to see progress. And the one thing that I'm really proud of within this B Lab US and Canada space is that this continued progress from its leadership and focusing on, building out a racial equity team. As you know, when you were certified. There was no racial equity team back in 2014, but that's because, again, the leaders recognized moving forward, like we need a team and we need a leader that can help not only our B Corps, but help us understand how does B Lab continue to show up and address some of these tensions. And so, shortly after the murder of George Floyd, B Lab US and Canada put a very bold statement on anti-racism on their website, addressing the ways that they are asking B Corps to show up, but more importantly, how they intend to show up. And it was through that manifesto, if you will, that the racial equity team was birthed. And, from there, I joined and I had the privilege of working alongside a colleague of mine. And now we are a 3-team mighty team, and we're continuously growing the team. And this is the resources that B Lab is continuously investing in because they understand the importance of it. And so I would just say for me, the being in this space has been an enlightening period for me because it's allowed me to see businesses in a different way. And I'm very proud to say that I know leaders within these businesses, and I know businesses as institutions that are doing phenomenal work, and kudos to those businesses.
So we've talked about some hopeful things, some solutions, some positive stuff. What are you experiencing as some challenges?
Oof. I mean, the challenge is, to be very quite honest with you, is, I'm seeing a lot of folks being a little bit more reluctant in using the term JEDI, racial equity, DEI, because of all the reasons why it's happening, whether it's on a political front or just folks looking to just not center those topics and challenges or issues within their business and within their communities. I see the challenge of continued strategic marketing dismantling of, work around JEDI, DEI, anti-racism work, businesses reluctantly feeling confident in sharing their perspectives on some of these issues and topics, and then really having to revamp our approach around, the narrative, the storytelling, the reason, the why. So that's one of the many challenges that I foresee. I also see a challenge of just the landscape is shifting when it comes to, I don't want to say politics because politics is not the focus here, but politics is tied to business and is tied to our landscape. And, I'm just hoping wherever we end up in terms of politics, we continue as business leaders and businesses focus on what our role is, right? And our role is to continue to show up in a way that we've been showing up, such as, again, Rhino Foods and Patagonia and Grayson Bakery. And I think we continue to focus on us. We are okay with some of the challenges ahead. There are always going to be challenges. To wrapping up your question, I think the challenges, there's always challenges. Back in when we started the team, the challenges was like, what does this even look like? And then from there, it's like, okay, now that this is here, what does this look like? So there's always going to be a challenge. I think it's how we respond to the challenge as leaders. It's how we galvanize our leaders to be able to address some of the things that are challenging for us. So this way we're not doing it in silos. B Lab US and Canada, we're a connector, we're a convener. We have experts within our ecosystem in terms of this institution, but ultimately we rely on our ecosystem, our B Corps, to really move forward, this collective activation. And so I say, I'm not really wanting to give any of the challenges fuel. And so hence why I'm trying not to name as many, because then I don't want it to feel like now it has ground and 2 legs to stand on, because challenges are challenges. Challenges will show up. What I would say in response to that is for businesses to stay true to their core. Remember why you're here. Do not follow the trend and jump ship because it seems hard. Remember the purpose of what it is that you're doing. And if you need support, remember there is a community that can support you, and that's how leaders have been recognized in the past. There's no leader that we know or studied in our books while we were in school that did not come across any challenges, and so how they responded to the challenge, and how they maintained their longevity within that challenge is what really allowed the outcome to be what you and I get to benefit from today, and that's my goal with continuously showing up and supporting B Corps, is to support them in the challenges that they see ahead, and allowing them to recognize that we got their back, and we're here to continue to support them, to continue to show up for the reasons why they're here in the first place.
I like the way you reframed that. Appreciate that. So as we move to close, I'm wondering what's What's a question that you don't get asked, but that you wish you did?
It's a good one, Sean. You're making me think this morning.
That one's not mine, but I use it.
Yeah. A question that I'm not asked, I think, is how can we be doing more work collectively in terms of like, how can I partner with another V Corp? How can I partner with another business to do this work? Like, businesses don't need to be doing it in silos, right? Businesses don't need to be trying to figuring it out on its own. Like, there's so many great leaders and businesses within this ecosystem that we should be talking more with each other, right? And this is why I gave the example earlier with Grayson and IKEA. Like, I love how that partnership, that relationship came about because it was a conversation, right? Of two leaders coming together and just realizing like, man, I love what you're doing over here. How can I do this? And now we have IKEA globally implementing this program within their institution. And so like, I think a question is, again, how can I partner with other businesses? Like, how would you approach, another business to like be able to collaborate? Another question that I'm not asked is like, how do you continue to fund these programs and like, how do you continue to support these communities? Because as you may know, Be Lab US in Canada is a nonprofit, right? And so a lot of the work that we do is through amazing funders that support and believe in our work. And, the reason why we get that support is because of, the programs that we're designing. And that's what my team is doing, is designing the programs to support the community. And so, I would love the question to be asked like, hey, how can we help support these programs more? And like, how can we get more funding over to you? And then one of the most important ones that I would really appreciate is just like, how are you hanging in there in terms of the challenge, right? Because, as I lead the racial equity work and the landscape that we're living in today, it's a very hostile environment. It's a very hostile environment for those who even say the term racial equity. It's a very hostile environment for those who is in this space and speaking, truth to what it is that they're experiencing and their communities are experiencing. And so, remembering there's leaders in these positions with families, with people that care about them and people and their own mental health. And so I oftentimes feel people think that like, it's okay and this work is easy or, you have it all figured out. And so I think from a human level, just checking in to seeing like, hey, how are you holding up with everything that's shifting? How are you holding up with things that are changing that is all relevant and pertinent to your role? It just brings a level of humanity back into the conversation for me that reminds me that people see you outside of what your responsibilities are. And that for me is some of the questions I wish I'd be asked, but I'm an open book. I connect with a lot of great people throughout my networks, whether that's on LinkedIn, whether that's in conferences, and a lot of folks approach me and would love to have conversation around some of these areas that I lead. And I would just say, pull up, ask me a question, ask to have a coffee chat and just figuring out who I am and the reasons why I'm doing this work. But more importantly, like, how can you be a part of this work and how can you show up as a leader within this space and how can I support you in that process? And that's my goal and hope from that interaction.
Thanks, Hugues. It's beautiful.
With love.
Appreciate you. What do you need right now? Anything our listeners can support you with, contribute to? Websites or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I would.
The work.
Yeah, I would love for folks to take a look at our website, Be Lab US in Canada's website. Take a look at our programs. I have the privilege of designing in partnership with Be More with Anu, a learning journey that focuses on foundational learning, which then moves into organizational learning, community learning, and societal learning, allowing businesses to understand what that translates to in terms of like understanding the historical ways that racism has entered the very fabric of our society and how that impairs businesses, how that, as much as businesses don't want to admit, like has not allowed their business to thrive. And so really just check out the website, see the programs that we've designed, sign up for the programs. You can also check out my LinkedIn and see some of the work that I've done. If you have any questions or you would love to chat, feel free to reach out. You can find my LinkedIn at Hugues Sygney Jr. That's the profile. And then also I'm getting involved in a lot of other projects that I'm really excited about. So like I've just recently been asked to join a board of an amazing climate justice organization doing some work in Haiti around reforestation. And, that program is called Grown in Haiti, which I would love listeners to just, take a look and seeing what that program is about. This program is the only program in Haiti that is recognized by the UN in doing reforestation. And as you know, one of our key factors and focuses is on climate justice, as we have an amazing lead for that work. Kylie Niels over at B-Lab US in Canada doing that work. And so, having folks to check out that program and recognizing all the amazing leaders and work that is happening around these areas, from racial equity to climate justice to stakeholder governance. And yeah, would just love for listeners to reach out and just continue to find ways we can be in community and build together, because again, this is a collective effort, and I've always operated in a collective approach. And so, yeah. And then also lastly, Freedom Through Knowledge, that's the organization that I started back in Haiti. Freedom Through Knowledge is doing some phenomenal work with youth and impacted communities, both in Haiti and in Brazil. You can find more information on Freedom Through Knowledge on our website. We also have an Instagram page, FTK Movement on Instagram. And then there's the documentary that I mentioned earlier on, in sharing and uplifting the voices of patients that, listeners can take a look at. It's called IET Pale, AYITI Pale, PALE. And that means, in translation, Haiti Speaks. And they can take a look at that documentary to get a sense of, what's going on in the ground in Haiti. It's a very raw short film that was shot back in 2010, again, shortly after the earthquake. So just giving, some context there in terms of visuals, but it's a powerful, beautiful documentary that uplifts what the Haitian people are doing within their community with hopes to find solutions. And so, those are some resources I would ask folks to check out, and we'll just love to be in communities. So thank you again for the time, for your continued leadership, Sean. And, let's continue to get bolder, remain in our authenticity, and continue to build relationships that not only addresses the challenges in communities, but builds family and community in a way that now, you're rebuilding a structure that was never there before for your kids, for the younger generation, and for leaders within your business. So appreciative for all that this platform has done, and for the spaces that I've been allowed to be in and to do this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Hugues. Really appreciate your voice, your perspective, your grounding, your, what feels to me like a generous invitation of like, come on,
please
come on in. Let's
Absolutely.
do this together, right?
Absolutely.
So here we are. We're here with you, and looking forward to our journey together.
Appreciate that, Sean. And then one last shout out I wanted to give. I also am part of the BMW Foundation as a global responsible leader. The foundation is doing some phenomenal work around climate justice, and again, a regenerative economy. And so, please check out their website, BMW Foundation, see what they're doing, because again, these are institutions that are really stepping into what it is to be leaders around social impact. And I'm just really glad to be a part of some of these institutions. So shout out to the BMW Foundation as well.
Beautiful. And we'll get all those in the show notes, and we'll keep on moving. Thanks so much, Hugues.
I appreciate you, my brother.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Before you go, we wanted to let you know that our spring cohort of the Next Economy MBA begins on March 26th. If you're an entrepreneur seeking to create a business that works for all life, a member of a team looking to transition your organization into one that is more regenerative and democratic, or someone who's considering a career or livelihood transition in embodiment with your values, we designed this course for you. Over this 9-month learning journey, you'll have the chance to learn practical skills around business and life design based on our work with over 250 social enterprises. In addition to live sessions, you can deepen your experience and practice with special sessions, affinity groups, and connections with over 500 alumni who have participated in the course. Interested in learning more? Visit lifteconomy.com/MBA to view our course curriculum and sign up for a free intro with one of our facilitators. If you're ready to sign up, you can use the code PODCASTMBA to save 10% on tuition. We hope you'll join us.